Enormously fun. Folks, thank you. I'd like to welcome you to our September Harwich Golf Committee meeting. And in terms of the record, I guess, introductions, Martha Duffy, Carol Fuller, Steve Bellata, Clem Smith, myself, Jack Conley, Paul White, and John Crook. And just an announcement you've probably seen in the course of publication. I always put the next meeting date on that agenda. Hopefully it's read or absorbed. With permission of the committee, I'd like to make a recommendation that we move that meeting date from the 18th because of a conflict with town meeting. Sorry about that. It's on me. We'll move it back one day to the 17th. Does that work? October.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Hopefully everybody is back.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think a motion is necessary at all. Everybody's in agreement?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great, great. Okay, folks, under, I guess you'd say, unusual circumstances, the agenda as published did not completely recognize the fact that we have two invited guests, or two guests today, Joe Powers, our town administrator for the town of Harwich, and also Don Howell, select person, representing the interests of the selectmen, and Mr. Powers representing, of course, the best interests of the town. In terms of the agenda, I'm going to ask that we suspend action. In terms of public comment, the fact that, you know, sometimes you can't get what you want. But our invited guest, Roman Greer, for medical reasons, is not present. And therefore, I will ask to suspend his report in response to that, as well as the consent agenda, to afford Mr. Powers and Mr. Howell a chance to speak to one of the agenda items in particular, working under the assumption that I would have in hand a report from our director in response to the last special meeting, many of which you attended, under advice of the town administrator, as well as input from the select board and selectmen. Gentlemen, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thanks for having me. And on behalf of Mr. Howell and myself, we appreciate you letting us present to you folks in the manner that the chair has just described. I'm going to go in more detail in a moment and just give some brief remarks right now. Turn it over to one of my 5 bosses and the group to whom I report directly, meaning the Board of Selectmen. But as the chair had indicated, the Director of Golf Operations is not present at my direction. He is home dealing with whatever he's dealing with, but beyond that, I wanted to be able to present to you folks, as does Selectman Howell, relative to some of your old business topics, and to just put out there that on behalf of the town, and that is the procurement department, that is the golf department, and all of the related groups that are working on different things. Here to say tonight that we're going to take a pause on the T plan item that's recognized in your agenda. Again, T being TEE, as in where we strike the ball at the golf course. Mr. Chairman, as you know, you do not have yet the USGA report. We would be holding off on any discussion on the short course putting complex, because that's an ongoing procurement process that town administration is still working on. And then I would ask for you folks to hold off discussion regarding some facility observations. However, the primary purpose for my presence this evening, and I believe Selectman Howell, is to go back to the T plan discussion. And I think to put a fine point on it, we know we being the administration department, I know you folks have met several times, at least one of your meetings, if not 2 of your meetings involved the Assistant Town Administrator, Megan Eldridge. I had directed her to attend, to listen to the discussions on that. As you may know, I have directed Megan to be the town's primary point person on procurement. And so when we talk about the T plan, I know we're talking about discussions with a golf course architect, and we're talking about potential further projects and procurements. And so we're here tonight to say that we're going to put a pause on all of that so that administration, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, can take these topics under advisement and come back to you folks in a well-defined manner and process of next steps. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to stop at this point, turn it over to Mr. Howell for his remarks, and then I'd be more than happy to make some suggestions to you folks on next actions after that.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Let me start with the fact I'm not a guest. I'm the liaison to your committee for the Board of Selectmen. I do not, as a matter of fact, I wrote that portion of the charter. I do not pretend to speak on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, but I am the liaison for it, and I'm not going to tell you how to vote on anything, because that's your prerogative. But I'm going to cover some ground that I covered the last time that I was out of the regular meeting, because I think it's important, since it didn't seem to take entirely, that we do cover that ground. You folks are an advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen. You do have purview over policy matters. That means plans, objectives, things that might occur at the golf course in general. And I know I'm going to start winding up annoying pretty much everybody on the committee at the moment, but I got to get some things straight. You don't email Roman. You're not involved in the day-to-day activities of, that doesn't mean you can't observe what's going on. And it doesn't mean that you can't talk to me or talk to Joe as it would be appropriate. But even I don't tell Roman what to do. I work through Joe. Roman reports to him, not you. Now, having said that, I was quite clear that the idea of some of you going to Roman and not others is a non-starter. That's not in accordance with the open meeting law. You do your business in public, in front of people, everyone, including the chair. I've talked to the chair about having agenda meetings with Roman, but that's about it. You're not to go to his house to have discussions, but in order for you to be able to come up with coherent positions on what it is that's being proposed on the golf course, which is part of the policy obligations you have to recommend to the Board of Selectmen. And again, you recommend, you don't get the final say. You have to be able to have a discussion where the appropriate person is here, whether it's Roman, the architect, whomever. If there's a discussion that's to be made, they have to be part of it to answer questions, because that's part of the public discourse. I reiterate what I said before. It's not a country club. It's a municipal golf course. And that gets me to the second part, stakeholders. I presume most of the women behind me are golfers. That's almost irrelevant to me. Your biggest stakeholder happens to be the citizens of the town of Harwich who own the golf course. More than half of them happen to be women. And I expect in every discussion that has something to do with the grand arc of where you're gonna be in 3 years, in 5 years, or whatever, that you take note of the fact that all stakeholders need to be part of that discussion. And that includes the citizens as well as the golfers. And that's not a request, that's your obligation. If I have to bring this back to the Board of Selectmen and come up with us overruling a decision you've made, I feel perfectly comfortable in doing that if I don't feel like you've solicited anybody's opinions or you disregarded them. And to that end, the voices that you agree with are no more important than the voices you disagree with. Your obligation as a public servant, which is really what you are as an appointee to the committee, is to listen to all sides and to come up with something that's accommodative to everybody to the maximum extent possible, because it is not your golf course, it is our golf course. I mean, I don't know whether I want to go any further with that. It's not punitive, but it is a fact that while we value your participation, we are grateful for everybody putting in the time they put in. Likewise, there's a reciprocal obligation on your part to be able to follow what it is we expect of a committee. Everything needs to be done in public. I was really not happy with the special meeting because I was expecting, rather than everybody having discussions about what Roman thinks or what he feels, that would have been the appropriate venue for him to show up for questions to be made relative to a single issue, which is what was supposed to happen, that did not happen. In the future, which is the only thing we can deal with here, I expect that everything is done publicly. There's always minutes, and that's for both here. If you come up with a subcommittee in the future, it's gotta be voted. And every time they meet, it's gotta be posted. And every time they finish a meeting, there gotta be minutes to them, and they have to be voted. And then everybody on the whole committee needs to know what the subcommittee did in real time. If there's any questions about what I'm saying, please pitch in now. But I mean, it's pretty clear. It's a government body. You serve at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen within your terms. And everybody has to be pulling a wagon in the direction of the good of the town and not individual agendas. So you don't manage the public asset, the golf course on a day-to-day basis. You don't tell the employee that's been put into the two employees really at the top, whether it's the golf director or the grounds director, I don't know what his title is.
Superintendent.
But neither one of them are answerable to you in terms of what they do in their day-to-day activities. On the other hand, they are bound by what it is the Board of Selectmen has agreed to, and largely you've always agreed with what you folks have pitched. But whatever the Board of Selectmen agrees to is conveyed to Joe. Joe is the manager of the actual day-to-day government. He's the town administrator. Anything that has to do with individual performance for the town employees goes through Joe. Even I don't interfere with that. So that's as clear as I can make it. But policy, I expect everyone and anyone who could possibly be involved in a decision to be included in the discussion and for you folks to actually take it seriously. Whether that means that you gotta advertise for it, or, I don't know about you, but I can't tell you the last time I was so bored that I turned to the public notice section in the newspaper. So it's not really your mechanism for getting the word out. If something really important is happening, you really need to be able to reach out to make sure that you're contacting people. But things through the years have changed. One of you, I think you weren't here the last time I had made the comments. I know Clem said that there was a commission. I happened to have been a selectman in the early 2000s also, and I was involved in the charter of the change. It was a golf commission. Admittedly, it was kind of a fiefdom of its own because they had procurement authority and it was like a different construct. That was changed in 2008. And it was changed by the state legislature. It's incorporated into our charter, making this a committee rather than a commission, and advisory to the Board of Selectmen. And I take that role pretty seriously myself. So whatever else happens, I expect this to function in the manner that I just discussed. Whether you do or don't like what the public comment is, you need to solicit it. And it has to be part of this. And whoever would be relevant to have discussions at that meeting as to be able to give real-time opinions or professional advice needs to be there so that they can answer questions. It's not, and I don't want to see people get discourteous with that. It's all about what it is they're proposing, what it would achieve, and whether there's a better way of doing it or a worse way of doing it. That's simply what I'm saying. Does anybody have any questions about the operation? Because it really didn't seem to sink in the last time.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Going back to the special meeting that we had a couple weeks ago, you made reference to that. Now, what did we do that was not under the guidelines of what you're looking for?
Let's
There was
talk
a
let's talk
discussion.
about the spirit, it's not the guidelines. I expected, and I was sadly disappointed, that if it was about a report that somebody could give a professional insight on, that person would be there. Because there's no point to the meeting otherwise. It was a single subject meeting. And questions that I didn't feel had adequate answers had not been given the opportunity in an open session. I don't care whether one or two of you has gone to the golf director and talked to them. The purpose of the meeting was to have that aired out in public and have questions answered.
Okay.
That did not happen.
Well, I mean.
He wasn't there.
He wasn't there, no.
What am I to say then? I mean, did you all get the opportunity to give feeder data to ask questions to him in writing, or was that done by one person?
No, we didn't do that.
Okay, that's my dissatisfaction in this. It doesn't work like that. It works publicly.
Question.
State.
You talked about us soliciting public input. Beyond posting the agenda in advance, we have regularly scheduled monthly meetings, the third Tuesday of every month, et cetera, et cetera. What obligations, if any, are we under to go beyond that to actively seek increased public input? Because the vast majority of our regular monthly meetings that we have no one from the public or you know, 1, 2, 3 people tops. And, you know, we typically don't have the liaisons, it's there every month, and the public is more than welcome. I was thrilled. The best part of the special meeting in my mind is we had the largest group of public input we've ever had in my terms on the committee, which was wonderful, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's owned by the town. Every taxpayer is a part owner of the golf course. I'd love to see them come. What else can we do, or are we obligated to do?
Let me unwind that, because there's several comments in there. You have not seen your liaison, because I typically treat you all like adults who know what you're doing. So you will not see me in general unless A, you have a question, or B, something isn't working right.
Okay?
So you can infer from that what you would like, but I'm
Okay.
here tonight. Secondly, you're absolutely right. You could probably hear crickets at most meetings of these meetings. I will say that public hearing kind of meetings, I have been disturbed for more than 20 years for people showing up saying, yeah, we held a public hearing. How many people came? Nobody. Well, in my view, I mean, Joe's heard me say this before, but I'm going to bring it up again. I grew up in Yonkers. Our slogan was, who the hell let that happen? Everything was done in privacy, in the dark. That ain't going to happen here. Mm-hmm. You are blessed with having meetings in a place which is not far from where the Mayflower Compact happened. The citizens are involved in things. You guys are all citizen participants. I think you could imply, though, that the meetings that do have a lot of participation are the ones you should probably pay a lot of attention to, because it takes some motivation to get up and come in here when normally no one does. Mm-hmm. That by itself is profoundly speaking to maybe something else is happening that I should be listening to. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you get more people, but I pretty much, Joe knows I said it yesterday, I pretty much am an advocate of, I don't care. Put it on Channel 18, to tell friends, put it on the side of a bus, I don't care. But try things that are important. You should make an effort to make sure that everybody's part of the discussion. And then and only then you can say, listen, we tried everything we could. Nobody seems to care. They think that we're going in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But unless you exhaust all means, putting just a legal advertisement in my view, is not quite enough. But, you know, there are people here now. There are people here in the special meeting. Mm-hmm. And you're right. I know when I watch, I do watch other meetings that are recorded, and there aren't any people. So I'm just presuming that that's one of those, I'm not sure how important the agenda is, though. But we're at a critical juncture. You have both the tee box discussion, you have what you're going to do for the remainder of your plan. Those are major arcs. I mean, that have to do with the policy of what kind of golf course are we going to have, what does it look like, and who gets to play on it, and how inviting is it, all that kind of stuff. Those are big things. It's not about, well, I don't like the color of the columns in the clubhouse that you're painting. Those you don't get into. So, but big things, I would make an effort to make sure everybody's part of the discussion, and then and only then you could say, listen, we tried to get everybody, and this seems to be the best conclusion.
Okay.
Yes.
Don and Joe, in this instance, the director of golf invited us to review a report. And so we did. And when we reviewed the report, it raised some fairly serious questions. And so I think our mistake was, and I certainly didn't know, but because he asked, I thought we could indicate what issues we saw with the report. And then conversation came to a halt. However, there were pieces of information that I thought we should, are we able to ask for pieces of information that are relevant, like the whole report, or what was really asked, in this case of the architect? We never really saw in writing what was asked, so we don't know what was said. And we've gotten some inconsistent answers. So we tried to raise them, found out we couldn't discuss it, went to you, thinking that as the liaison, you were our point person. I think that was correct, and that sharing it with Joe was very relevant.
Yeah. Let me
but-
get you to where the line is. Any of you emailing who are going personally to visit Roman is out of bounds. You can't do that. Because again, you're doing public business, but you're not a committee. You're only an individual when you do that. But, and this is the obligation of the chair to make sure that this happens, the meetings have to be set up such that the relevant information and the relevant parties are all available to everybody here, so that when the public meeting happens, which has to be posted, and that's why people get to come to it, and it's being recorded, so everybody gets to hear what the questions are and what the answers are. It doesn't necessarily mean the conclusion that you're looking for or you're looking for is going to satisfy you, because everybody gets to vote on, the conclusion. But you can't ignore, how you get to the conclusion. If there are questions that are out there, they need to be put out and answered by the appropriate parties. You don't get to rush to the conclusion you want to because that's what you want. You have an obligation to listen to everybody and also be able to question the people that need to be questioned. So I don't expect, I don't feel that Roman is really part of this as much as the process has just not been followed correctly. Roman does have to answer questions. I don't expect him to have to defend himself about anything, but I do expect that he reports to you what went into his thinking and why you came to a recommendation of this sort or that sort. That has to do with, again, there's a big divide here that has to do with the policy. It doesn't have to do with day-to-day operation where you're not happy with the length of grass that Sean cut that day. That's a different story, but if it has to do with ramifications about how the course plays, how it's laid out, what its operation is, those are appropriate things to happen, but only here. And I made that point last meeting, I'm making it again. It's public, it's a public meeting, and that's why it's public, because there are plenty of people out there who are willing to cite you if you do anything. Anything that came out of that subcommittee can be called into question. It wasn't voted in, it didn't post anything, it had no minutes, so there's no legitimacy to its recommendations at all. It didn't even happen, at least legally. So I think you guys need to understand that.
So, Don, I do not, were we inappropriate calling this a special meeting and purposely inviting the director of golf and possibly the architect to come to that meeting so that we could, as a committee, bring these issues to him, who is the director of the golf?
Martha, where you are right now, That's what I would have done, but let me say the final thing here. We can go round and round with this. I mean, you serve your terms based on the votes of the Board of Selectmen, each of you. I mean, and we are the final say in what your recommendations are because of the way it's structured. Instead of getting involved in a discussion about what you didn't do right, why you didn't do it right, who's at fault, what I want to say is, from this moment forward, you operate the way I'm telling you you need to operate, and we start going forward with that as the operation mode, and look forward to how we come to a conclusion that is in accordance with everything I've just said. So when you have your discussion about Roman's report, when you have any of these things, do it openly, have him available to answer questions, and vote on it. That's the way this thing works. That's the way it should have always worked, but I don't want to go back, because we go back far enough, there's a lot of skeletons in everybody's closet in the operation of town government. I prefer to look forward to, everybody here is here because they got good intentions and they want the best for the golf course, and by extension, for the town. So let's focus on that. You've got an opportunity. We're not going to be doing much activity tonight because of what Joe has discussed. Let's take this as an opportunity to reset and understand what we're going to wind up doing in the future so that it's inclusive of everybody's voice. Is that clear?
Okay, not exactly. What is our next step? What do we do? Do we ask for the architect again and Roman to be present in another special meeting? I mean, to us, this plan contains some serious flaws, discrepancies, inaccuracies, and
Hold on a
other
second. Would I be
issues.
correct in saying we're not actually pursuing actively right now, effectuating the plan so that tomorrow somebody's going to come out there and start building stuff?
Correct. As I understand it, the project referred on your agenda as T-Plan was an appropriate action by the Director of Golf Operations, where he used sound business practices to engage in a contract that was valued less than $10,000. So that's the minutia that I deal with on a daily basis. What I just conveyed to you was the requirements of Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, which are the procurement laws. So the administrator, by vote of the board and the charter, is known as the Chief Procurement Officer. I have the ability and the authority to confer that upon others. So Megan Eldridge is the primary point of contact on that. Department heads are responsible for producing and bringing forward their procurements. Roman is the department head in this instance. So he acted appropriately by seeking a contract under 30B that's less than $10,000 so that he could be advised and potentially build on future projects or decisions by hiring the architect that was the architect previously. So that is the discretion, the sole discretion of the department head in consultation with administration. The reason why we're here this evening, beyond what Selectman Howell has talked about, I think from my perspective very helpfully, on your governance process, how you operate, I'm here to say that the T-Plan, so-called, is going to be taken under advisement by administration before we take any next steps. And the next steps might be that if Roman has a report from an architect that talked about the issues that he wanted, he will probably then develop, if not a request for proposals, probably more accurately, a capital outlay request, whereby he envisions the golf course doing something with tee boxes. So that's keeping it at the general level. Since that's the next step, that's an administrative step first. And so the reason I'm here tonight is to say, we're gonna take a pause on the T-Plan. We're gonna come back. When I say we, I mean Megan and I, with Roman, to you folks, to let you know what the update is on the outcome of the current T-Plan, if we envision perhaps another contract or another effort to revisit the T-Plan. But all of that leads to a potential procurement that's down the line of the process. No different than your topic of the short course putting complex, where my understanding through Megan is the town has already solicited request for proposals, which again is under 30B, which is the required action given the scope and the nature of the project, and no decisions have been made yet on that next step. The decisions to be made on that next step would not come from the committee. It would come from Roman and/or administration and staff, because Roman would make a recommendation to me, we would execute a contract, and depending upon the dollar amount, I'll either sign that contract or that would go to the board. So what we're saying tonight is we are fully aware, Board of Selectmen and the administration department, and certainly, let me speak in the first person now, me as town administrator. I believe I'm fully aware of the issues that have been brought to light regarding the development and the discussion of the T plan. I've also heard some allegations made against employees, which I cannot allow to continue, because employees are my sole purview, as Selectman Howell has mentioned. That's why I've asked Roman to take a pass on tonight's meeting, because it's got nothing, if anything, to do with Roman. It has everything to do with procurement process and next steps. And so I'm saying this evening that I would ask you to move items 2 and 4 to your meeting on October 17th. Items 1 and 3 will be held in abeyance so that administration can work with staff and develop next steps and procedures. Mr. Chairman, you may want to go through the process of finalizing your minutes, but I would urge the committee at that point to then stand down until your meeting on October 17th. And that's because we're aware of, yes, we love to have people come out to meetings. No, we do not like to have them in smaller meetings. We would like to have more chairs filled in here, and we want that robust discussion to continue going forward. But given the temperature of what's happening going on, I've made the decision to stand down on those so that it can go internal for a period of time.
I want to add one thing to that. You have your own channels. You still, if what is being proposed does not meet the objectives that you feel that you have out there, your avenue of redress is to say, we don't think that this is going to accomplish what we want, and then go to the Board of Selectmen, who works with the town administrator. But that's how this works. You don't go directly, Roman did not, I can assure you, Roman didn't come up with a plan deliberately to annoy certain members here. But he's working off of what he thinks is your future plans. And I'm suggesting that the way you've approached those plans is not really public enough, that you really need to have everybody involved in them. So you can take this time as a gift, really, because nothing's going to happen in the interim, and have a discussion about where that fits into the overall plan for the course. But basically, you don't have control over whether the procurement does or does not proceed forward. The Board of Selectmen and the town administrator does. And that's where we're at. So nothing's going to happen right now because nothing's going to happen right now.
And so next steps would be relative more to T-plan than to the short course. I'll bring it back through the chair and this committee in a manner by which we can ensure that we have offered ample opportunity to the satisfaction of many, not most and not all, that the town has heard ample input on what we're contemplating, not with the T-plan per se, but the projects that will come from that going forward. So that it's an effort for me to say, it's now on me to make sure that when we revisit this topic, it's done in a manner that more folks can feel comfort that there was an opportunity to be heard. So we're taking a pause.
And I'm with that last statement. That's exactly where we're at.
Well, we appreciate that, but we would never have even gotten your attention if we had not taken the steps that we had, because this is not an inclusive process.
Let's move forward, because I don't want to get to the point of anybody blaming anybody else. We're at the point where everybody's going to get heard, because I'm insisting everybody's going to get heard, and Joe's insisting everybody's going to get heard. That's what you're hearing. Whatever it is that you think was going to happen yesterday is not happening now. So that's the takeaway here. You'll have time to have the further discussion. Please, let's talk about what we can do rather than what we didn't do.
I hope so. Thank you.
I guess I'm a little confused. I have no issue with pulling back. where I'm confused is, how is the, let me say, the administrative and the procurement aspect going to solicit input from parties other than within your purview?
So, thank you for the chance to clarify. I would not be soliciting as administrator. Anything would be solicited through the public body, the golf course committee, for that purpose.
And then us.
I'm sorry?
And what?
And
And
through
then
the Board of
us.
Selectmen. What I mean to say is, I, as a public agent of the board in the town, do not do things unilaterally. I operate through and by public bodies such as this one.
Which is why we're both here.
Yep. So the next step would be to bring it back to the committee to solicit input from other parties.
Correct, any and all parties, yep.
To examine it. And should you all feel it's the neatest thing since buttered toast, then you would support it. If you don't, you'd say why.
And the other purpose for me to doing that is just timing. We have 230 days until our annual town meeting.
Approximately.
I always get it in, that's
Yeah, I
an
know you
exact,
do.
you know that. 35 days till our special, 230 days till our annual.
How many hours?
I'm not doing that, but coming up on less than 2. And the reason I bring that up is whatever may come out of these discussions will most likely impact upon fiscal year 2024 budget or the capital plan, which is a 5-year plan. So for me, I know time is of the essence, so I want to take an opportunity to pause, give everybody a chance to breathe, revisit it in a perhaps more diverse and open process than folks have thought, excuse me, I can speak well, that it may have happened before.
And this
So
has,
we're not stopping anything, we're pausing with an eye towards making sure there's comfort in the community, that we're going about it the right way, and that the output, so after your input and advice and information, the output then is to then see if the town is gonna go forward on funding requests to do procurement.
and this is a global thing, so that you can use every single meaning of what I'm going to say. We would rather get this right than fast. And it's a global thing when I say right.
Unless there's any more comments or questions, Mr. Chair?
No, I think based on, what you gentlemen have,
I have another question, if I may.
oh, Steve?
You mentioned earlier about stakeholders. And the course is owned by the town, absolutely, and therefore, in essence, every taxpayer in the town is a stakeholder in the golf course. I'm assuming that the town government and administration would welcome in any form feedback from the stakeholders. We're gonna have an obligation to accept feedback and thoughts and ideas from the stakeholders on any topic, be it the golf course or anything else. Are we, as members of the golf committee, because we're members of the golf committee, are we not afforded the same level of access for feedback to town government and town administration because we are appointed and selected and approved by the select board?
You're making a mistake in asking that question of the 2 former chairs for the Charter Bylaw Committee who are sitting here. In a certain way, yes, and in a certain way, no. As a committee member, you don't get to go ballistic over something and say, those other people wouldn't listen to me, and start a letter writing campaign of your own and say that I'm going to take this thing down on my own, because you have kind of less ability to do that because you're part of the committee, and the committee may have spoken as a voice.
Yeah.
I just want everybody to understand, though, that how you got there matters to me. I make that comment in numerous different ways, so that matters. And let's not beat around the bush. To the extent that something has to do with a particular party, like the tee boxes for the women, I would fully expect that the women themselves get the chance to have that opinion expressed to you. Because they're the ones who are using it.
To the committee, but that's
Yeah.
not my question. My
I
question
know,
is.
but my answer is bigger than your question.
Sure, and
No, it is, and it's just nebulous, but so be it.
Joe?
As a stakeholder,
You can write a letter, but you cannot allege that it's the position of the committee
Oh,
because
no,
it
no, no,
isn't.
no, that's not what I said.
So,
I
Steve,
never,
if
I
I
never
could-
suggested that it would
If
be.
I could weigh in for a moment on that?
Sure.
My take on it is as follows. So in this particular set of circumstances, the town has a department. It's the golf department. And we have a director of that, and that director reports to the administrator reports to the Board of Selectmen. That director is supported by an advisory committee, is what I look at, most committees unless there's regulatory. And that committee exists for the benefit of the director in his decision-making and processes, as well as the superintendent, to come to information gathering, input, and all of that. But from there, the director then works through, the reason why I know how many days there are until town meeting is because every single day is spent on working towards the next annual town meeting.
Sure.
Because it is the most important event that we will have in our town every year. So part of that process is, the director would work through this public body as one of many mechanisms to engage the public behind me on that topic. If you then take votes of action, that constitutes a thought or a vote of the committee. That's something that the director is now empowered to work with. He then comes to me to make the argument that the operating budget item, the capital item, community preservation, whatever it may be, and the funding for it, he has to get through me, because I have to develop the comprehensive budget. Then we, the director in this case and I, then continue down the process and meet with the finance committee. The finance committee is responsible for evaluating anything and everything that comes before town meeting that has a dollar value. You folks could avail yourself of that process. However, you should not, under rules of parliamentary procedure and decorum, speak contrary to what the actions of the committee were or what the director were once you had your opportunity to weigh in. And that's the burden that you bear by serving on a public body. And that is majority will prevails.
Sure.
And so you have opportunities to continue to advocate for it, for sure. You can assist the director in convincing me, you can assist me and the director in convincing the finance committee, and then you can convince me, the director, the finance committee, to the board, and vice versa. And then last but by no means least, it goes before the voters of the town. And there are no prohibitions on that. The moderator will call upon any voter. However, you should still recognize that you bear that burden of not working adversarially to what the committee offered by vote and what the director went forward on, because that is dilatory to what your charge is. So, no, you're not precluded, but yes, you enjoy certain benefits, being able to create what is articulated at this level, but then you have a burden to make sure that you're operating in fairness and impartiality under our rules of order and procedures.
I want to give you one other extension. I don't think any of you sitting in this room, because the capital plan includes items that cost $50,000 or more. I don't have the authority to approve them myself. Town administrator doesn't. Board of Selectmen doesn't. Goes to town meeting. So I'm fairly certain you don't want to go through this whole endeavor and find yourself getting torched at town meeting because there was significant blowback because people didn't feel like they were heard.
Okay.
So
But my question,
bear that in mind.
my real question was more focused, which is, if there's an item of feedback that a stakeholder, a taxpayer in this town, would like to give to you as the town administrator, or to anyone on the select board, I'm assuming they're free to do that.
Yeah, I get what you were saying,
At
but as a
their
committee
leisure.
member, you're already
Would
on
you
record.
let me finish, please? Before you answer? If any taxpayer can give that feedback, if it was not something on the agenda and discussed at a golf committee meeting, do we, as taxpayers and stakeholders, are we afforded that same opportunity to give feedback?
If you have no
to-
position,
Excuse me?
if you have no position as a committee, yeah.
Okay.
Because you did, what Joe's trying to say is you had ample opportunity within the discussion on the committee ramping up to a vote.
Again, I
You
understand.
are on record as having your opinion.
I
there.
understand that, but I'm talking about things that weren't addressed at a committee meeting, weren't on the agenda. I'm just another taxpayer who wants to give feedback to our elected/public employees on an issue that affects me personally in the town. Am I
Steve, for my
prohibited from
benefit,
doing that because?
Are you saying you, Steve, a member of the golf course, or are you saying Joe Q. citizen?
Joe Q. I'm asking if there's a difference between, are there restrictions on me, Steve Bellotta, as a taxpayer and a stakeholder, but also a member of the golf committee? Are there more restrictions on me providing feedback to Roman outside of my role on the golf committee?
So my short
I
answer
get
is-
off the course, I see
Yes.
Roman, I go, hey, Roman, I'm
Yes.
thinking, we never talked about it at the committee, but I'm thinking we might be a little bit better off.
By your willingness to serve, by your willingness to take your oath of office,
Yeah,
by your willingness to do your ethics training, your open meeting law training, and all of that, that's a burden that you also bear because you are on the golf committee.
okay.
The benefit of being on the golf committee is that you are one of, 1, 2, 3.
Seven.
Thank you. One of 7 with an immediate opportunity to create a discussion point at a public event.
Yeah, understood.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So Joe, you're, just for
We have
clarification,
we have a question behind you,
Well,
Joe.
yep, you have to go through the chair.
Yep.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just say, in the interest of time, I do have to leave in 5 minutes.
Okay. And to that point, excuse me, I'd like to bring this conversation to some kind of conclusion. I'm sorry?
My question's related to that.
So Karen, at this point, the chair has indicated there's not going to be public comment.
Okay.
They're working amongst the committee, I think is what the chair has said.
So based on your recommendation, I guess I would entertain a motion that we move items 2 and 4 as per the agenda to the October meeting and indefinitely postpone items 1 and 3 for consideration until such time that the town administration deems them worthy to bring back to the committee for our input.
I would so move.
Could
I need
you,
a second?
could you be a little more clear about the timing of that again, please, Clem?
Items 2 and 4 would move to the October 17 meeting. Indefinite postponement implies at the discretion of, to create flexibility, to the point Mr. Howell made as far as the global nature, we want to do it right. We're not on a specific timetable. That's the determination that would be made by town administration as I see it. Correct,
Yeah,
gentlemen?
you'd have the ability to schedule it at such time as we feel that it's ripe to have that discussion and that the relevant parties are available to discuss whatever it is that's available to that. You have to make them available. I mean,
Right.
that's an understanding I have to have leaving the room.
Exactly.
If you hold the agenda item from now on,
Yeah.
there needs to be ability in real time, in public, to be able to have these questions answered. And that's where it happens. And that's also where it ends.
So I need a second?
Can I-
Second,
can-
Jack.
Can
What
I
are 2
just
and
have
4?
another?
Excuse me. We have a second. Jack Conley. I just want to make sure that it's clear on the record. Paul White. And there is permissible discussion. Carol?
Thank you. So there are parts of this plan, Joe and Don, that cost no money, that are very simple to implement for the sake of a rating. Are you saying we
If I may, Mr.
cannot?
Chair, I don't want to go too
Yep.
parliamentary, and that's my issue, by the
Okay.
way. Not chief former chairs, but as a parliamentarian. The chair has just accepted a motion and a second.
And
The
yes,
question before you is whether these items should be pushed off till the 17th and held, and others held in
Yeah,
abeyance.
good
So
point.
you want to direct your discussion
Yeah.
to the chair and your colleagues.
okay.
Can I simply ask?
Steve,
rather-
she
Steve.
still has the
Okay,
floor.
sorry.
So what I'm saying is that we have certain elements of this plan that are pretty easy to implement, that could get the course re-rated for example, all of the men's tee boxes, if the men on the committee have no issue with the design. There are certain elements of the longer course that could be easily altered that are no cost. The placements exist that we could approve that also could end up with the course being re-rated quickly. And then there is an element that we would prefer to wait until a later time. Is that possible?
You can't have that discussion tonight because it's not subject to the
yeah.
agenda, but you can consider that as a future discussion if it doesn't relate to any procurement that's going on right now, or might go on.
Thanks for that input. Steve, you had a question or point of discussion?
Rather than just the numbers, because I can't seem to find it right. I'm sorry. What are 2 and 4? Before I vote.
Thank you.
Rather than just referring to the number 2 and 4.
2 and 4 are-
Just tell me what they are. and-
Steve, the answer is 6.
USGA, Steve, the USGA report
Here's
and,
the agenda,
the USGA report and suggestions concerning facilities.
the other side.
And suggestions,
Okay.
You gotta go.
Okay, call the question.
suggestions what?
What if you had traffic?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any dissenting votes?
I'm not
Do I want to
voting.
take it roll call?
There's also
Okay.
abstentions.
Do we have a unanimous?
Yes, I passed.
Okay.
She abstained.
Abstain?
Yes.
Okay. So we have 6 yeas and 1 abstention. The motion carries. So, gentlemen, thanks for your time and input. And Don, I have one quick question, because this is paramount. We have all these people, they were here, many of them, at our last meeting, and they gave us our input. And there seemed to be a very, very convoluted dynamic as far as, hey, I want to hear what she has to say, or what she has to say. But here's the point. In the end, if I was at a meeting of the selectmen, I can give you all the input I want. Whose decision is it, Don, as far as the vote's concerned? Is it the selectmen, or is it the weigh-in of that segment of people who chose to be at that meeting? Because we are, and you've referenced it, I believe the population of this town is 13,000 plus. Am I in the ballpark?
Somewhere around
Okay,
13,400.
so in other words, if I've got 7,500 people here, and they're all women, I'm convinced very strongly that they are interested in what affects them. But if I'm looking at 25 to 30 people versus 7,500, that seems a little bit out of balance.
If there's a question in there, my answer is, how many people normally come?
Well, I just,
Let's
that
just move on to
Right,
listening
okay.
to voices and trying to be respectful with each other.
okay, gentlemen, with no other business to bring before the group tonight, based on the action taken, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, it's been moved. All in favor?
She had a question earlier, though. Did you have a?
Wasn't in order.
That was precluded by the fact that, Steve, I said we were suspending public comment.
It wasn't
for
on the
this
agenda,
meeting.
it wasn't in order.
You've got a motion to adjourn, you have a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
I promise you I wasn't